Have you ever stopped to think about what it means to have everything money can buy, but nothing your heart truly needs? There once lived a woman who became one of the wealthiest people in America. Her name was Sarah Winchester. She owned mansions worth millions. She could afford anything in the world. She had servants, land, jewels, and power. But she was also one of the loneliest people who ever lived. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that most people get wrong. They say Sarah Winchester was crazy. They say she built a giant, confusing house because she believed ghosts were chasing her. Tour guides at her famous house tell visitors she was running from the spirits of people killed by Winchester rifles. But that's not the whole truth. The real story is about a brilliant, educated woman who lost everyone she loved. It's about how she tried to escape her sadness by building and never stopping. It's about guilt, loneliness, and what happens when you have all the money in the world, but no one to share your life with. Let me take you back to a morning in 1906 when everything changed. The morning the world shook, April 18, 1906. 5:12 in the morning, the sun hadn't come up yet. The sky over San Jose, California was still dark. Inside a massive, sprawling mansion, a small woman was asleep in her bedroom. Her name was Sarah Winchester. She was in her mid-60s. She stood just 4 feet, 10 inches tall. Arthritis had twisted her fingers and hands. She moved slowly and with great pain. Suddenly, the earth beneath the house began to shake. It started as a low rumble, like distant thunder. Then the rumbling grew louder. The walls began to tremble. Picture frames rattled. Chandeliers swung wildly. The floor buckled and rolled like ocean waves. Sarah woke up in terror. Outside her bedroom door, the hallway twisted and bent. Wooden beams cracked like gunshots. Plaster dust filled the air. She tried to open her bedroom door, but it had jammed shut. She was trapped. This was the Great San Francisco earthquake of 1906. One of the most powerful earthquakes in American history. It killed over 3 people and destroyed countless buildings. Inside the Winchester mansion, a massive 7-story tower began to collapse. It fell with a thunderous crash, crushing the beautiful gardens below. Walls cracked, windows shattered. Parts of the house that had taken years to build were destroyed in seconds. Sarah was stuck in her bedroom, in complete darkness, not knowing if she would live or die. Eventually, her servants managed to break down the door and rescue her. She was shaken but unhurt, but something changed in her that morning. For 38 years, she had been building this house non-stop, day and night. The sound of hammers and saws had been constant. Workers had been employed around the clock. She had created this massive structure to protect herself, to give herself purpose, to keep herself busy. And in one terrifying moment, that very structure had nearly killed her. The house she built to be her fortress had become her prison. What everyone gets wrong about Sarah Winchester. Let me tell you what most people believe about Sarah Winchester. They say she was a strange, superstitious old woman who talked to ghosts. They say a psychic once told her that she was cursed. According to the legend, the psychic said the spirits of everyone killed by Winchester rifles were angry and hunting her. The only way to confuse these ghosts and stay alive, the psychic supposedly said, was to keep building a house forever with staircases that lead nowhere, doors that open into walls, and hallways that twist back on themselves. That's the story you'll hear if you visit the Winchester Mystery House today. And it makes for a good ghost story. It's spooky, it's mysterious, it's perfect for tourists who want to be scared. But it's not true, or at least it's not the whole truth. Sarah Winchester was not a crazy woman. She was one of the most educated women of her time. She spoke 4 languages fluently: English, French, Spanish, and Italian. She studied advanced mathematics. She learned about architecture and engineering. She could quote Shakespeare from memory. She played piano beautifully and read constantly. This was not a foolish person. This was not someone who believed silly superstitions. So why did she build such a strange house? Why did construction never stop for 38 years? Why are there staircases that go nowhere and doors that open into walls? The answer is much sadder and much more human than any ghost story. A brilliant girl in a time when girls weren't supposed to be brilliant. Let's go back to the beginning. Sarah Lockwood Pardee was born on September 13, 1839, in New Haven, Connecticut. Right away, we should notice something. She was born on the 13th. This becomes important later because the number 13 appears over and over in her house. People say she was superstitious, but maybe she just liked the number because it was her birthday. Sarah grew up in a well-off family. Her parents believed in education, which was unusual for girls in the 1840s. Most girls at that time learned only basic reading and writing, along with skills like sewing and cooking. They were expected to grow up, get married, have children, and take care of a household. But Sarah's parents sent her to the Young Ladies' Collegiate Institute, one of the best schools for girls in America. There, she studied subjects that most girls never learned. She took classes in science, mathematics, astronomy, and languages. Teachers noticed she was incredibly smart. She memorized things easily. She loved solving puzzles and math problems. She asked thoughtful questions. She also loved music and art. She practiced piano for hours every day. She read books about architecture and studied the designs of famous buildings in Europe, and she was considered very beautiful. People in New Haven called her the Belle of New Haven, meaning she was the prettiest and most charming young woman in town. At about 5 feet tall, some records say 4 feet 10 inches, she was quite small, but she carried herself with confidence. She was known for her dark hair, intelligent eyes, and graceful way of moving. Young men in New Haven were eager to court her. But Sarah wasn't interested in just anyone. She wanted someone who respected her intelligence, someone from a good family, someone with ambition. In 1862, when Sarah was 23 years old, she met that person. His name was William Wirt Winchester. A wedding and a fortune built on bullets. William Winchester came from one of the wealthiest families in Connecticut. His father, Oliver Winchester, owned a company called the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. They made rifles, guns. And not just any guns. They made some of the best, most reliable rifles in the world. The Winchester rifle, especially the model 1008, 166, and later the model 1008, 173, became legendary. People called the model 1008, 173 the gun that won the West, because it was so popular with settlers, cowboys, soldiers, and unfortunately, with people who wanted to take land from Native Americans. These rifles were incredibly profitable. Oliver Winchester was becoming one of the richest men in America. When Sarah married William on September 30, 1862, she joined one of the most powerful families in the country. At first, everything seemed perfect. William was kind and intelligent. He loved Sarah deeply. They moved into a beautiful home in New Haven. They had servants, fine furniture, and all the comforts that money could buy. Sarah seemed to have everything a young woman could want in the 1008, 160s, a loving husband, wealth, social status, and a bright future. But then tragedy struck, and it struck hard. The baby who lived only 40 days on July 15, 1008, 166, Sarah gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Annie Pardee Winchester. Sarah was overjoyed. After 4 years of marriage, she finally had the child she'd dreamed of. She imagined teaching Annie to read, to play piano, to speak French. She imagined watching her daughter grow up, get married, have children of her own. But Annie never got the chance to grow up. The baby was weak from birth. She had trouble feeding. She couldn't gain weight. Doctors called her condition marasmus, which meant severe malnutrition and wasting away. In those days, doctors didn't understand much about infant nutrition or the importance of vitamins and proper feeding. They tried everything they could think of, but nothing worked. Annie died on July 24, 1866. She was only 40 days old. Imagine that. You wait years for a baby. You hold her in your arms. You smell her baby smell. You feel her tiny fingers wrap around yours. You start to dream of her future, and then, just over a month later, she's gone. Sarah was destroyed. She fell into what we would now call severe depression. For days, she couldn't get out of bed. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't talk to anyone. She just lay there, staring at nothing, tears running down her face. Friends and family tried to comfort her. But nothing helped. The pain was too deep. This kind of grief can break a person, and in many ways it broke Sarah. For the next 10 years, she lived in a fog. She went through the motions of daily life, but she wasn't really living. She was just surviving, day by day, hour by hour. And then, in 1881, tragedy struck again. The husband who coughed blood, William Winchester, had always been a strong, healthy man. But in the early months of 1881, he started coughing. At first, it seemed like a normal cold, but the coughing got worse. He developed a fever, he started losing weight, and then one day he coughed into a handkerchief and it came away spotted with blood. Everyone knew what that meant. Tuberculosis. In the 1880s, tuberculosis, also called consumption or TB, was one of the deadliest diseases in the world. It attacked the lungs, making it harder and harder to breathe. There was no cure. No medicine could stop it. Doctors told William to rest, to get fresh air, to drink milk and eat well, but none of that made any difference. On March 7, 1881, William Winchester died. He was only 43 years old. Sarah was 41. In just 15 years of marriage, she had lost her only child and her beloved husband. She was completely, utterly alone, but she wasn't poor, far from it. When William died, Sarah inherited an enormous fortune. She received $20 million in cash. In today's money, adjusted for inflation, that's worth about $550 million. She also inherited nearly 50% of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, which meant she got almost half of all the company's profits. Every year, that brought in about €1.00 per day. Every single day, without lifting a finger. In modern terms, that's like earning about €28.00 per day. Over $10 million per year for doing nothing. Sarah Winchester was now one of the richest women in the entire world. But what good was money? Her daughter was dead. Her husband was dead. She had no one to share her life with. No one to love, no one to care for. The money felt like a curse. Blood money and a guilty conscience. There's something else Sarah couldn't stop thinking about. Where did all this money come from? Winchester rifles. Hundreds of thousands of Winchester rifles had been sold. They were used by the U.S. Army. They were used by cowboys and ranchers. They were used by lawmen and outlaws alike. And they killed people. Lots and lots of people. During the American Civil War, Winchester rifles killed soldiers on both sides. During the Indian Wars, they killed thousands of Native Americans who were fighting to protect their land. The rifles were used in crimes, in shootouts, in murders. Every single rifle her family sold, every bullet that was fired, added money to the Winchester fortune. Sarah was a deeply religious and moral person. She read the Bible, she believed in right and wrong, and she couldn't escape the uncomfortable truth. Her wealth was built on death. Some people say this guilt haunted her for the rest of her life. Whether or not she literally believed in ghosts, she certainly believed in moral responsibility. She needed to do something. She needed to make things right somehow. But how do you make up for thousands of deaths? How do you balance the scales? Sarah didn't have an answer, not yet. Go west, the doctors said by 1884, Sarah's health was getting worse. The arthritis in her hands and joints was becoming unbearable. Some days she could barely hold a pen or a fork. The cold, damp winters of Connecticut made the pain even worse. Her doctors told her she needed a change. Go west, they said. Go to California. The warm, dry air will be good for your arthritis. The sunshine will lift your spirits. It was common advice in those days. Rich people with health problems often moved to California for the climate. Sarah thought about it. Why not? She had nothing keeping her in Connecticut. No husband, no children, no close family, just painful memories. So in 1884, she packed up her things and moved across the country to California. She settled in the Santa Clara Valley, near the small city of San Jose. It was quiet, peaceful, and surrounded by farmland and orchards. The weather was mild. The sun shone almost every day. Sarah liked it. In 1886, she found a piece of property she wanted to buy. It was an unfinished farmhouse that belonged to a doctor named Robert Caldwell. The house had only 8 rooms and sat on 161 acres of land. It was modest, simple, nothing fancy, but Sarah saw potential. She bought the property and immediately started making plans, not to finish the house the way Dr. Caldwell had intended, but to completely redesign it, to expand it, to turn it into something extraordinary. She didn't hire a professional architect. She didn't want someone else telling her what to do. She wanted to design it herself, room by room, based on her own ideas. And once she started building, she never stopped. The construction that never ended. Here's where the story gets interesting. Sarah Winchester hired carpenters, woodworkers, masons, and craftsmen. She paid them very, very well. At a time when most workers earned maybe $2 or $3 per day, Sarah paid $3 to $5 per day. A huge amount. Why did she pay so much? Because she wanted complete loyalty. She wanted workers who wouldn't ask questions. Workers who would do exactly what she asked, no matter how strange it seemed. And believe me, her requests were strange. Sarah would wake up early every morning and go to a special room she called the planning room. There, she would sketch rough designs for new rooms, new hallways, new staircases. Sometimes she worked from memory, thinking about buildings and designs she'd seen in books or on her travels. Sometimes she just made things up as she went along. Then she would call her foreman, a man named John Hanson, and show him the drawings. John would nod, say yes, ma'am, and get the workers started. Sometimes construction would go on for weeks. A new wing would start to take shape. Walls would go up. Floors would be laid, windows would be installed. And then Sarah would walk through and decide she didn't like it, tear it down. She'd say, build it again, different. And John and his crew would tear it down and start over. This happened over and over and over again. Rooms were built and then sealed off behind new walls. Staircases were constructed and then abandoned halfway. Doors were installed that opened into blank walls or into empty space with a dangerous drop to the ground below. Was this madness? Was Sarah losing her mind? No, this was a woman trying to control something. In her life, she had lost control of everything. She couldn't save her baby. She couldn't save her husband. She couldn't control death or disease or fate. But she could control this house. If she wanted a wall moved, it got moved. If she wanted a staircase torn out, it got torn out. If she wanted to spend $10,000 on fancy wood paneling for a single room, she spent it. The house became her obsession. Not because she believed in ghosts, but because building gave her a reason to get up in the morning. As long as there was hammering and sawing, as long as there were workers and noise and progress, she felt alive. She felt like she was doing something, creating something, making something beautiful. The moment the hammering stopped, she would be alone with her thoughts, alone with her grief, alone with her guilt. So the hammering never stopped for 38 years, from 1886 until her death in 1922. Construction continued every single day without a break. The man who built Sarah's dreams, John Hanson. Let's talk about John Hanson for a moment. Most people who visit the Winchester house today have never heard his name. Tour guides don't mention him. Brochures don't talk about him. But without John Hanson, the Winchester house would never have existed. John was Sarah's head foreman, the man in charge of all the construction. He was a skilled carpenter and builder. He was also patient, loyal, and willing to put up with Sarah's constantly changing plans. Every morning, Sarah would meet with John in the planning room. She would show him rough sketches, sometimes just scribbles on scraps of paper, and try to explain what she wanted. I want a room here with windows facing south. I want the floor to be parquet with this pattern. I want a fireplace in the corner. John would listen carefully, ask a few questions, and then go to work. He understood that Sarah wasn't just building a house. She was building a world where she had control, a world where things happened the way she wanted them to. And he respected that. He never argued, he never complained, he just did the work. Sarah paid him well and treated him with respect. In return, John gave her his complete loyalty. Their partnership lasted for decades. John saw Sarah through her best days and her worst days. He saw her walk through the house with excitement when a new room turned out beautifully. He saw her slumped in sadness when grief overwhelmed her. He never judged her. He just kept building. This is an important part of the story that people forget. Sarah Winchester wasn't alone. She had a team of skilled, dedicated workers who believed in her vision, or at least who were willing to help her pursue it. John Hanson and his crew were the hands that turned Sarah's dreams into wood and stone. A palace of strangeness, what the house looked like by the year 1900, the Winchester house had become something extraordinary. It was no longer a simple farmhouse. It had grown into a massive, sprawling mansion, unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Let me give you some numbers so you can imagine the scale. 160 rooms. The exact number changed over time as rooms were built, sealed off, or torn down. 40 bedrooms, 2 ballrooms, 47 fireplaces, 10 zeros, 0. Windows, 17 chimneys, 2 basements, 3 elevators, very modern for that time. Approximately 24,000 square feet of space. If you walked through every room and spent just 30 seconds in each one, it would take you over an hour to see the whole house. But the size wasn't the strange part. The strange part was how it was designed. Staircases that go nowhere. There's a staircase with 44 steps that rises only about 9 feet. Why? Because each step is only about 2 inches high. It twists and turns 7 times. It takes forever to climb. Tour guides say it was built to confuse ghosts, but the real reason? Sarah's arthritis made it painful to climb normal stairs. So she built stairs with tiny, shallow steps that were easier for her to manage. Doors that open into walls. There are doors that, when you open them, reveal a solid wall. There are doors that open into empty space, step through, and you'd fall 15 feet to the ground. Why? Because Sarah changed her plans constantly. A door might have made sense in the original plan, But then she added a new wall or changed the floor height, and the door became useless. Instead of removing it, she just left it there. Windows in strange places. There are windows that look from one room into another room instead of outside. There are tiny windows near the floor and huge windows near the ceiling, secret passageways. There are hidden doors disguised as wall panels. There are hallways that twist and double back. There are rooms you can only reach by going through other rooms. The number 13 appears over and over. Some windows have 13 panes. Some rooms have 13 hooks or 13 panels. Some staircases have 13 steps. People say Sarah was superstitious, but remember, she was born on September 13. Maybe she just liked the number. Inside, the house was incredibly beautiful. Sarah spared no expense. She imported rare woods from around the world: mahogany from Honduras, rosewood from Brazil, white ash, maple, teak. She had floors made with intricate parquet patterns, 6 different types of wood, fitted together so tightly you couldn't slide a piece of paper between the boards. She commissioned stained glass windows from Louis Comfort Tiffany, the most famous designer of the time. One of these windows featured a spiderweb pattern. Tour guides love to say it represents trapped souls. But Sarah just loved geometric patterns, that's all. She installed the latest technology: indoor plumbing, gas lights, later converted to electricity, central heating, and 3 elevators. This was cutting-edge stuff in the 1890s. Most houses didn't have these things. She built a grand ballroom with beautiful wood paneling and space for an orchestra. It cost $9,000 to build enough money to build an entire house at that time. But here's the sad part. That ballroom never hosted a party. No music was ever played there. No one ever danced. The 40 bedrooms never had guests. The fancy dining room rarely saw dinner parties. Sarah built a palace designed for hundreds of people, but she lived there alone. The Invisible Woman: How Sarah Hid from the World, even though Sarah employed 18 full-time servants, maids, cooks, gardeners, stable workers. She rarely spoke to them directly. She designed the house so she could move through it without being seen. She installed a system of electric bells. She would press a button in her room, and a bell would ring in the kitchen or the servants' quarters, summoning whoever she needed. They would come to a specific location, receive written instructions, and then go do their work. She built secret windows, small windows hidden in walls, so she could look into rooms and watch the servants work without them knowing she was there. She had private staircases and hallways that only she used, so she could move from one part of the house to another without running into anyone. Why did she do this? Some people say she was paranoid. Some say she was just extremely shy. But I think the real reason is simpler. Sarah was in pain. Constant, terrible pain from her arthritis. She was also deeply depressed, and when you're suffering like that, sometimes you just want to be left alone. You don't want to make small talk. You don't want people looking at you with pity. You don't want to pretend to be okay when you're not. So she built a house where she could be invisible. She was surrounded by people, but she was utterly alone. Pause and think. What does this say about us? Before we go on, I want you to think about something. We live in a world that values money and success. We think that if we just have enough money, we'll be happy. If we can just buy the right things, live in the right house, have the right clothes and cars and gadgets, then we'll feel good. But Sarah Winchester had more money than almost anyone in the world. She could buy anything. She could go anywhere. She could have anything her heart desired, and yet she was miserable, because money can't bring back the people you love. Money can't heal a broken heart. Money can't fill the emptiness inside you when you've lost everything that mattered. Sarah Winchester is proof of that. She built a house with 160 rooms, but every single one of them was empty of love. This is why her story matters. It's not about ghosts. It's about what it means to be human. It's about loss and loneliness and the ways we try to cope with pain. If this makes you stop and think, then that's good. These are the stories worth telling, the ones that make us look at our own lives and ask, what really matters? The weight of blood money, Sarah's guilt. Let's talk about something uncomfortable. The Winchester fortune was built on guns. Guns that killed people. Now, to be fair, not everyone killed by a Winchester rifle was innocent. Some were outlaws. Some were enemy soldiers in war. Some were dangerous criminals, but many were not. Thousands of Native Americans were killed by settlers using Winchester rifles as the United States expanded west. These were people defending their land, their families, their way of life. They were slaughtered, and Winchester rifles were one of the main tools used to do it. Sarah knew this. She wasn't stupid. She wasn't naive. She read newspapers. She knew what was happening in the West. She knew her family's company was profiting from violence, and it ate at her. There's a legend that Sarah once visited a psychic in Boston, a woman who told her she was cursed by the spirits of everyone killed by Winchester guns. The psychic supposedly said the only way to appease these spirits was to build a house for them, and to never stop building, because the day construction stopped, Sarah would die. Is this story true? Probably not. There's no solid evidence it ever happened. It sounds like something made up later to sell more tickets to tourists. But here's what I think is true. Sarah did feel guilty, deeply, painfully guilty, and she tried to make up for it in her own way. She donated large amounts of money to charity. She helped fund hospitals and schools. She gave generously to help victims of the 1906 earthquake. And she provided jobs. For 38 years, she employed dozens of workers. She paid them well, gave them steady work, and treated them with respect. In some cases, she paid for their children's education or their medical care. She couldn't undo the deaths caused by Winchester rifles. But she could use the money to do some good. It wasn't enough to erase her guilt, but it was something. The one person who saw the real Sarah, Marion Marriott, around the year 1900, Sarah's niece came to live with her. Her name was Marion Marriott, and she was the daughter of Sarah's sister. Marion was young, cheerful, and full of life. Sarah adored her. For the first time in years, there was laughter in the Winchester house. Marion played piano. She tried to organize small tea parties. She walked through the gardens with Sarah and told her about the latest books and news from the outside world. Marion saw a side of Sarah that no one else saw. To the rest of the world, Sarah was the strange gun widow, the recluse, the crazy old lady who built a haunted house. But to Marion, Sarah was a kind, intelligent, deeply sad woman. She was a woman who had suffered terrible losses and never recovered. She was a woman who used her wealth to create beauty, even though she couldn't enjoy it herself. Marion later wrote that Sarah was the most misunderstood woman I ever knew. She described Sarah as soft spoken, thoughtful, and incredibly generous. She said Sarah knew the names of every worker's wife and children. She remembered their birthdays. She helped them when they were sick or in trouble. This wasn't a monster. This was a woman with a broken heart who did the best she could. Marion's presence brought some light into Sarah's life. But it couldn't heal the deep wounds. Nothing could. The final years. When the body gives out by 1920, Sarah Winchester was in her 80s. Her arthritis had become so severe that she could barely walk. She moved through the house in a wheelchair or with the help of servants. Some days she couldn't leave her bed. Her hands, once graceful and skilled at piano, were twisted and gnarled. She could no longer hold a pen to draw plans. She could no longer play music. The construction slowed down. There were still workers on the property, still repairs and small projects, but the frantic pace of earlier years was gone. Sarah was tired. For 38 years she had poured her energy, her money, and her soul into this house. She had created something massive and strange and beautiful. But now, at the end of her life, she had to face a hard truth. The house hadn't saved her. It hadn't brought back her daughter or her husband. It hadn't erased her guilt. It hadn't filled the emptiness inside her. It was just a house, a very big, very expensive, very strange house. And soon she would have to leave it behind. September 5, 1922. The hammers fall silent on the morning of September 5, 1922. Sarah Winchester died peacefully in her sleep. She was 83 years old. The doctors said it was heart failure. Her body had simply worn out. The moment the servants realized she was gone, something happened that the house had never experienced in 38 years. Silence. The hammering stopped. The sawing stopped. The sound of workers' voices faded away. For the first time since 1886, the Winchester house was completely, utterly quiet. Some people say the workers were so superstitious that they dropped their tools mid-swing and ran away, terrified that Sarah's death meant the ghosts would come. But that's probably just another legend. The truth is simpler. The workers knew that without Sarah, there was no more work. The money was gone. The project was over. They packed up their tools and went home. The will, Sarah's final act of love. Sarah had spent years preparing her will, the legal document that explained what should happen to her money and property after she died. She could have done what most rich people do, leave everything to family, especially to Marion, her beloved niece. But Sarah did something different, something smarter, something kinder. She left Marion a lot of money, enough to live comfortably for the rest of her life. She also left her all the furniture, jewelry, and personal belongings from the house, but the house itself. Sarah ordered it to be sold. Think about that for a moment. Sarah knew the house was a burden. It cost a fortune to maintain. It needed constant repairs. It was too big, too strange, too expensive for anyone to really live in. She didn't want to trap Marion with it. She didn't want her niece to spend the rest of her life taking care of this massive, weird mansion. So she set her free. Sarah also left large amounts of money to build a tuberculosis hospital in Connecticut in memory of her husband who died of TB. That hospital saved thousands of lives. She left pensions, monthly payments for all the longtime servants who had worked for her. Some of them received enough money to live on for the rest of their lives. She even left money to workers, widows, and children. This was Sarah's final statement. I couldn't undo the harm caused by Winchester rifles, but I can use this money to heal, to help, to give people a better life. It was an act of redemption. What happened to the house, from home to tourist trap after Sarah's death, the house was put up for auction. Remember, Sarah had spent an estimated $5 million building it, equivalent to about $75 million today. But when it went up for sale, nobody wanted it. It was too strange, too impractical, too expensive to maintain. It finally sold for just $135,000. The new owners, John and Mame Brown, were smart business people. They realized that people didn't want to live in the Winchester house, but they might pay to visit it. Just 5 months after Sarah's death, the house opened as a tourist attraction. They called it the Winchester Mystery House and advertised it as haunted, cursed, and filled with ghosts. Tour guides made up stories. They said Sarah held seances. They said she talked to spirits. They said the house was designed to trap ghosts. None of it was true, but it sold tickets, and it still does. Today, the Winchester Mystery House is one of the most popular tourist attractions in California. More than 12 million people have visited it. They walk through the strange hallways, climb the staircases to nowhere, and listen to spooky stories. Very few of them learn the real story, the story of a brilliant, lonely, heartbroken woman who tried to build her way out of grief. The lessons we can learn from Sarah Winchester. So what does Sarah Winchester's story teach us? Lesson 1. Money can't buy happiness. This is the most obvious lesson, but it's worth repeating. Sarah had more money than she could ever spend. She could afford anything in the world, but she couldn't buy back her daughter. She couldn't buy back her husband. She couldn't buy peace of mind. All the fancy wood and stained glass and elevators in the world couldn't make her happy. Real happiness comes from love, from connection, from relationships with other people. It comes from doing meaningful work and feeling like you belong. Sarah had wealth, but she didn't have those things, and so she was miserable. Lesson 2. Staying busy isn't the same as healing. Sarah kept herself busy for 38 years. Every day there was planning, construction, decision, making. There was always something to do, but staying busy didn't heal her grief. It just distracted her from it. Real healing requires facing your pain, not running from it. It requires talking to people, getting help, allowing yourself to feel sad, and then slowly, over time, learning to live with the loss. Sarah never did that. She just kept building, hoping that if she built enough rooms, she could hide from her sadness. It didn't work. Lesson 3. Guilt can eat you alive. Sarah felt guilty about the Winchester fortune. She felt responsible for the deaths caused by the family's rifles. That guilt weighed on her every day. It poisoned her ability to enjoy anything. Now, we might argue about how much guilt she should have felt. She didn't design the rifles. She didn't pull the trigger. She just inherited the money, but she felt it anyway. And instead of finding a healthy way to deal with it may be by speaking publicly about the harm caused by gun violence, or by using her money to create peace organizations, she just withdrew into her mansion. The lesson: guilt is natural when bad things happen, but you have to find a way to turn that guilt into positive action, or it will destroy you. Lesson 4. Creativity can be a lifeline. Here's one positive lesson. Sarah's creativity kept her alive. Building that house was her art. It was her way of expressing herself, of creating something beautiful, of leaving a mark on the world. And for 38 years, it gave her a reason to get up in the morning. If she hadn't had that project, she might have given up entirely. She might have died much sooner, broken by grief. So in a way, the house saved her, not from ghosts, but from despair. We all need creative outlets. We all need projects, hobbies, and things we're passionate about. They give our lives meaning. Sarah's project was extreme, but the principle is sound. Create something, build something, make something. It helps. Lesson 5. Loneliness is a choice. And a tragedy. Sarah chose to be alone. She had the money to travel, to host parties, to join social clubs, to make friends. She could have remarried. She could have adopted children. She could have filled her life with people. But she didn't. She hid. She built walls, literal walls, between herself and the rest of the world. And in the end, she died alone, having spent 38 years in a house with 160 rooms, and not a single true companion. That's the real tragedy of Sarah Winchester, not that she built a strange house, not that she spent a fortune, but that she spent her whole life surrounded by beauty she created, and had no one to share it with. The mystery isn't about ghosts, it's about us. Here's the final truth about the Winchester Mystery House. There are no ghosts there. The real mystery isn't about haunted staircases or trapped spirits. The real mystery is this: how does a brilliant, educated, wealthy woman end up so completely, desperately alone? And what does that say about the rest of us? We live in a world that worships money and success. We chase promotions. We compare salaries. We dream of winning the lottery. But Sarah Winchester won the lottery. She had more money than almost anyone on earth, and it made her miserable. because she didn't have the things that actually matter: love, friendship, purpose, connection. She tried to fill that void with construction, with beauty, with endless rooms and fancy windows. But you can't build your way to happiness. You can build a mansion, but you can't build a home, not without people in it. Not without love. The house still stands today. If you drive through San Jose, California, you can visit the Winchester Mystery House. You can walk through those twisting hallways. You can climb the staircase that goes nowhere. You can open the door that leads to a blank wall. And if you're quiet, if you really pay attention, you'll feel something, not ghosts, but sadness. The house is beautiful. It's also heartbreaking. Every room is a monument to loneliness. Every strange architectural choice is a reminder of a woman who had everything and nothing at the same time. Sarah Winchester spent 38 years building, but what she was really trying to build, she could never achieve with wood and nails: a way to escape her pain, a way to bring back the people she loved, a way to forgive herself. In the end, the construction stopped not because she found peace, but because her body gave out. And the house, that strange, beautiful, sad house, remains. It stands as a warning, a reminder, a monument. Not to ghosts, but to the truth that no amount of money, no amount of building, no amount of distraction can replace the simple, essential human need to be loved, to be known, to belong. Sarah Winchester built a fortress, but she couldn't build her way out of loneliness. And that, more than any ghost story, is the real tragedy of the Winchester Mystery House. The house still stands today. If you drive through San Jose, California, you can visit the Winchester Mystery House. You can walk through those twisting hallways. You can climb the staircase that goes nowhere. You can open the door that leads to a blank wall. And if you're quiet, if you really pay attention, you'll feel something, not ghosts, but sadness. The house is beautiful. It's also heartbreaking. Every room is a monument to loneliness. Every strange architectural choice is a reminder of a woman who had everything and nothing at the same time. Sarah Winchester spent 38 years building, but what she was really trying to build, she could never achieve with wood and nails: a way to escape her pain, a way to bring back the people she loved, a way to forgive herself. What the tour guides won't tell you when you take the official tour of the Winchester House today, the guides tell you ghost stories. They point to the seance room where Sarah supposedly talked to spirits. They show you the spiderweb windows and claim they trapped evil forces. They tell you about the curse, about the angry ghosts of people killed by Winchester rifles hunting Sarah through the halls. But here's what they won't tell you. Sarah Winchester was not crazy. She was grieving. There's a massive difference between those two things. Grief can make you do things that look strange from the outside. It can make you hide from the world. It can make you pour your energy into projects that don't make sense to anyone else, but that doesn't mean you're insane. It means you're human. The tour guides won't tell you that Sarah donated thousands of dollars to help earthquake victims in 1906, even though her own house was badly damaged. They won't tell you that she paid for the education of her workers' children. They won't tell you that she left money in her will to build a tuberculosis hospital that saved countless lives. They won't tell you that the workers who built the house for 38 years respected her and stayed loyal because she treated them with dignity and paid them fairly. They won't tell you these things because kindness and generosity don't sell tickets. Ghost stories do. The real haunting, but if the Winchester House is haunted by anything, it's haunted by missed opportunities. It's haunted by the life Sarah could have lived but didn't. Think about what she could have done with her wealth, her intelligence, and her time. She could have traveled the world. She could have become a patron of the arts, funding museums and supporting artists. She could have used her voice to speak out about gun violence. about the harm caused by the weapons that made her rich. She could have opened her home to orphans or widows. She could have created a refuge for people who had lost loved ones, just like she had. She could have turned her pain into purpose, her grief into good, but instead she turned inward. She built walls literal and metaphorical, between herself and the world. She chose isolation over connection, and that choice defined the rest of her life. The house is haunted by what could have been, by the dinner parties that were never held in the grand dining room, by the music that was never played in the ballroom, by the laughter that was never heard in the 40 empty bedrooms, by the friendships that were never formed, by the love that was never shared. What modern society gets wrong about Sarah, we live in a culture that's obsessed with true crime and haunted houses. We love mysteries and spooky stories, and so we've turned Sarah Winchester into a cartoon character, the crazy rich lady who built a maze to confuse ghosts. We've stripped away her humanity and replaced it with legend. We've made her into entertainment, but Sarah Winchester deserves better than that. Her story isn't entertainment. It's a tragedy. It's a warning. It's a mirror we should hold up to ourselves. Because how many of us are doing exactly what Sarah did, just in smaller ways? How many of us are hiding from our pain instead of facing it? How many of us are staying busy to avoid dealing with our feelings? How many of us are isolated, even though we're surrounded by people? How many of us are chasing money and success, thinking it will fill the void inside us? Sarah Winchester's mistake wasn't that she was weird or superstitious. Her mistake was that she thought she could solve emotional problems with physical solutions. She thought that if she just built enough rooms, bought enough beautiful things, and stayed busy enough, she wouldn't have to feel her grief. But grief doesn't work that way. You can't build around it. You can't buy your way out of it. You can only go through it. The price of perfection. Here's something else worth considering. Sarah was a perfectionist. Every room in her house had to be exactly right. The wood had to be perfectly fitted. The windows had to be perfectly aligned. The designs had to be perfectly executed. And if something wasn't perfect, she tore it down and started over. That perfectionism kept her busy for 38 years. But it also kept her trapped, because nothing is ever perfect. There's always something that could be better, something that needs to be fixed, something that isn't quite right. And if you're waiting for things to be perfect before you can be happy, you'll wait forever. Sarah never finished the house because she could never make it perfect. And she never opened her life to other people because she felt too broken, too damaged, too imperfect herself. She thought she had to have everything together before she could let anyone in. But by the time you have everything together, it's too late. Life has passed you by. The workers remember there are very few first-hand accounts from the people who worked for Sarah. Most of them have been lost to time, but the few that remain paint a picture of a woman who was kind, fair, and deeply sad. One carpenter remembered that Sarah would walk through the construction site every evening, examining the day's work. If she found something well done, she would leave a small bonus for the worker who did it. If she found a mistake, she would simply ask for it to be fixed. No yelling, no punishment, just a quiet request. Another worker remembered that when his daughter got sick, Sarah paid for the doctor and sent food to his family every day until the girl recovered. She never mentioned it. She never asked for thanks. She just did it. These weren't the actions of a crazy person. These were the actions of someone who understood suffering and wanted to ease it for others, even though she couldn't ease it for herself. The workers also remember the silence. Sarah rarely spoke. She communicated mostly through written notes passed through her foreman, John Hanson. When she did speak, it was in a soft, gentle voice. She never raised it. She never complained. She just kept building, day after day, year after year, until her body gave out. The final morning on the morning of September 5, 1922, Sarah Winchester didn't wake up. A servant found her in her bed, her twisted hands folded peacefully across her chest. She looked, for the first time in decades, at rest. The doctor who examined her body said she had died in her sleep, probably from heart failure. Her heart, which had been broken so many times, had simply stopped beating. There was no dramatic final scene, no last words, no revelation or moment of peace. She just slipped away quietly, the same way she had lived the last 38 years of her life, alone, silent, and hidden from the world. The funeral was small. Her niece Marion was there, along with a few servants and workers. They buried her in New Haven, Connecticut, next to her husband William and her baby daughter Annie. The three of them together again at last. The grave is simple, just a flat stone marker with their names and dates. No mention of the house, no mention of the fortune, no mention of the 38 years of construction. Just a family, reunited in death after decades of separation in life. Why this story matters today: we're living in an age of loneliness. Studies show that more people today feel isolated and disconnected than at any other time in human history. We have more ways to communicate than ever before: phones, internet, social media. But we feel more alone. We have bigger houses, more possessions, and more entertainment options, but we're less happy. Sarah Winchester's story is more relevant now than ever because she had everything our culture tells us we should want: wealth, a beautiful home, the freedom to do whatever she pleased, and she was miserable. She's proof that the American dream, as we usually define it, is a lie. Money and success don't equal happiness. Bigger houses don't equal fulfillment. Being busy doesn't equal purpose. What we need are the things Sarah Winchester didn't have: real connection with other people, meaningful work that helps others, the courage to be vulnerable and let people see our pain, and wisdom to know that healing comes from facing our problems, not hiding from them. The last lesson, if Sarah Winchester could come back and give us one piece of advice, I think it would be this: don't wait. Don't wait until everything is perfect to let people into your life. Don't wait until you have enough money to be happy. Don't wait until you've built the perfect life to start living, because that perfect moment never comes. And before you know it, 38 years have passed, and you've built 160 rooms, and every single one of them is empty. Sarah Winchester built a fortress to protect herself from her pain, but in the end, that fortress became her prison. She locked herself away from the very things that could have saved her: love, friendship, community, purpose. The real mystery of the Winchester house isn't about ghosts or spirits or curses. The real mystery is why we're all so afraid to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to admit we're hurting, to let people in. Sarah Winchester's tragedy doesn't have to be ours. We can learn from her mistakes. We can choose connection over isolation. We can choose healing over hiding. We can choose to build relationships instead of building walls. The house she built still stands, a beautiful, sad monument to what happens when we let fear and grief control our lives. Let it stand as a reminder, let it teach us, let it warn us, and then let's do better, because in the end, the construction stopped not because Sarah found peace, but because her body gave out. And the house, that strange, beautiful, sad house, remains. It stands as a warning, a reminder, a monument, not to ghosts, but to the truth that no amount of money, no amount of building, no amount of distraction can replace the simple, essential human need: to be loved, to be known, to belong. Sarah Winchester built a fortress, but she couldn't build her way out of loneliness, and that, more than any ghost story, is the real tragedy of the Winchester Mystery House.